Foreign aid starts out as appropriated dollars. The State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development turn the dollars into contracts, which means the Trump administration's pullback on foreign assistance and its near total shutdown of U.S. aid. Contractors are feeling the pinch. Joining me with more, two attorneys with long federal experience from Jenner and Block, Ian Moss and David Robbins. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Very happy to be with you.
Good to talk to you again, Tom.
And Ian, let's start with you. You were at the State Department for a long time. Tell us the basics of how things normally work in foreign aid and contract letting. I guess a lot of the contracts are with overseas contractors.
That's correct. I think I would begin, Tom, first by saying this is very much uncharted territory. Not in any memory of mine can I find an example where there has been such swift, large-scale cancellation of agreements with the part of the private sector that helps to implement U.S. foreign policy and national security. So understanding what is happening, I think we're all trying to figure that out to some extent together.
And when the State Department talk about the balance between U.S.-based contractors, which help State Department and U.S. aid with the basics of operational support and this kind of thing, procurements for keeping the agencies going and computers. But then for U.S. aid anyway, a lot of the contracts for the aid itself are with local in-country NGOs and private companies. Talk more about the balance there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, setting aside, as you mentioned, the pretty significant group of organizations that help to just keep the agencies running through various agreements. In terms of implementing programs, designing programs, there's a large network of non-governmental organizations that frequently contract with local organizations abroad. And the idea behind that is, one, it is essentially helping to reinvest in local communities and to garner the expertise of individuals in those local communities who know the populations they serve, which in turn make the delivery of aid and various programming more effective.
And David Robbins, just from a purely legal standpoint, I mean, the government can cancel contracts for convenience. That's a particular advantage it has. Is that all that's going on here from a legal standpoint, or could there be more to this?
You're right. There's always an opportunity to cancel contracts for convenience, any reason or no reason at all. But that is not necessarily what's happening here. We have an imposed funding freeze, a refusal to pay, a refusal to hold up the central government portion of the bargain, which is to pay for the services they contract for. So we don't necessarily have terminations for convenience, which require an administrative step by a contracting officer to write a letter saying you are terminated. We just have a blatant breach and refusal to pay.
Right. So the contracts have rendered services then, as far as you can tell, which the government is obligated to pay but is not paying them?
Yes, that's part of what's going on. There is we are not paying you for services rendered before the orders saying we're just going to hit a pause in funding. There's validly tendered services that deserve payment, and payment is not coming. And then separately, there are orders for no further work. There's an attempt to impose basically a work stoppage, which requires, again, a particular administrative process without doing the necessary steps. And look, we've got case law over the years that says, government, you've got to do the necessary steps. They can probably get there in the end. They can perfect these things legally so they're operable and appropriate. But until then, it's not appropriately imposed, in my view.
We're speaking with attorneys David Robbins and Ian Moss of Jenner and Block. And Ian, back to you in your experience from the State Department and just watching this generally. What do you think the effect is on those contractors other than the pure economics of not getting paid? In other words, I'll just ask outright, is American prestige at stake here?
Without question, I would actually say American prestige has already been tarnished as a result of what really is a haphazard process to bring an end to foreign aid. I think that there will be catastrophic consequences in various parts of the world, and ultimately that means also significant consequences for American national security. The U.S. government has been a stalwart proponent and provider of aid that has saved millions of lives, and to recede in this way from what has been historically a bright spot in American foreign policy, raises a lot of serious questions and frankly is pretty sad. It also will have a pretty substantial impact on the larger ecosystem of organizations that have historically helped to deliver this aid and advance U.S. foreign policy. Some of them, unfortunately, will not make it.
I mean, U.S. aid has, as its basic mission, it has alleviated famine. It has helped reduce the spread of horrible diseases, using U.S. developed technology, things like that, infrastructure projects for countries that need it. Yet there have been reports, coming from the Doge and Elon Musk of funding, transgender parades, this kind of thing. I don't know. There's a bunch of them listed. The dollar amounts are small in some cases, $30,000, $1 million, nothing like the big projects that USAID does. How do those decisions get made? And is there any opportunity for someone to say, let's skip that one. Let's work on the water project this nation needs and not a parade for this or that group type of thing, if in fact that's what actually happened?
Well, what I would say is I will tell you how they should be made. The administration should take a scalpel to these programs as opposed to a cleaver. And there has been no real discerning approach. This, as David mentioned, was just a blanket cessation, which has caused significant confusion and uncertainty, not just for the organizations, but again, for the people that they deserve. The administration, the State Department, for example, has said that it is conducting a review that is to conclude in 90 days. We'll have to wait to see whether or not that happens. If you take them at their word, then there will be an analysis of these programs. It's unclear right now what the process will be. They may have to resubmit proposals. They may start anew. But again, that also will require a significant lift. And one of the concerns here is folks have been dismissed. So who actually is going to conduct that review? The professionals that are most steeped in this process, at least at USAID, don't have access to their computers.
Sure. And David, then what is your advice for Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State? I'm not even sure he knew he would inherit USAID as its acting administrator, but that's what happened. And what should he do now if he can repair the damage or smooth the waters in some way, presuming he wants to do that?
Presuming he wants to do that, and it's a good question. What I think I would tell the Secretary is devote resources to this review. Let's move quickly from the cleaver to the scalpel that Ian mentioned. If there are things the government doesn't want to fund, and it is their right to decide not to fund, get there quickly to avoid choking off an entire ecosystem and, frankly, at the end of the day, having to pay an awful lot more in breach damages than they would have saved otherwise.
Because you also have the issue of the people in country where many, many, many USAID employees are, and for that matter, State Department employees, the ones that are U.S. nationals have gotten the resignation letter. The USAID people are effectively out of work, at least for now, told to come back to the United States within 30 days. How can they rebuild if everyone gets home in 30 days and in 60 days they decide, we should be doing these things after all?
It's a dramatic problem. It's one that's going to take ramp-up time, long lead time, and would any staffer reasonably want to go back to that line of work, recognizing they could be told to come home at a moment's notice, having made their plans? It is a real challenge and one that I would like to give the benefit of the doubt and maybe just wasn't thoroughly thought through rather than is by design. But it's one that will be expensive and time-consuming to correct.
And Ian, it sounds as if the damage from a financial standpoint might be worse for those foreign-based contractors. Some of them are small, some of them are NGOs,